Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Sheila Lotzar, happy to host our session today, joined again by Vern Schellinger, who's our networking expert. And I haven't talked about myself in a very long time. I'll just super fast, mention I do career coaching, resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, interview strategies, and all that stuff. And Vern is also a career coach, and he does a lot of networking strategies and other parts of the job search. So together we kind of, I think, have some complementary perspectives. And so we are delighted again to help you guys out this week. And we would love to start with anybody who'd like to have a job search question. And if we don't have any right now, we'll do what we did last week, which is go around the room and have folks introduce themselves. How can I stop saying during interviews? It's a great question. The thing is, and I'm not a speech expert, per se. What I can suggest is that you slow down and you measure your words and you take breaths, right? Because the thing is people typically do when they're trying to have a filler between sentences, and then the next sentence, right? So if you are more deliberate of putting a period at the end of your sentence mentally, right? And take a breath and go to the next sentence, you're going to be less likely to have to do the That's my general sort of understanding of that. Vern?
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is just practice. I mean, sometimes it's a difficult thing to videotape yourself on your phone and then play it back and look at yourself. But obviously then it becomes even more pronounced when you see the and it hopefully would spur you to do exactly what Shira said. Slow down, think in terms of sentences. If you've created your source stories or your par stories or your what's the acronym you use?
I use SAR. Everybody uses something. It's exactly. Yeah. It's a story.
Yeah, it's a story. As you write that, obviously, then you're gonna read it to yourself, but then say it out loud and just get comfortable saying those things, and hopefully that will minimize or obviously best case start to eliminate all of or most of the happen in an interview.
So I just what they say, if you want to know something, Google it. So I just did how to stop, and all I had to do was how to stop saying, and then popped up. So yeah, so here we go. I guess HBR has it, Business Insider has it,
yeah.
Videos on it. Okay, lots and lots of stuff. You're not the only person who has this challenge, apparently. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. Good morning, Pam. Hey, you're on mute. All right, so any other questions?
Morning.
Morning.
I have a question. I don't know. I went to one of those workshops yesterday where it's about applying for federal jobs, which I hadn't looked at before. Yeah. And it gave me a few questions. And one of the ones was the person who was presenting the workshop said that when you apply for a federal job, it's okay to have gaps in your resume if you're taking out things that are not pertinent to the job. And that didn't sound right to me. I've always heard that for federal resumes, you're supposed to put everything. And so when he said, no, if it's not pertinent, leave it out, have a gap, just tell them it wasn't pertinent. So I was just wondering about that.
So just to press pause, neither Vern nor I are federal government experts. Rick Webb, if he comes today, he's with the government contracting world. He might know that. I'm not sure whose class you were in, but if you have a question like that, Corliss Jackson, who used to be on our call all the time, or somebody on her team used to be on our call. That's all they do. It's federal government resumes. I'm going to put her. Do you know her, by the way? Okay, so I'm going to put her name and email in the chat. So it's Corliss Jackson. It's Corliss. So for anybody watching this, Corliss at Federal Job Results.com. And she said she's always open to answering, short questions like that. That's for a long time. Again, her team was on here, so that's all they did was literally answer stuff like that.
Yeah. And I guess I would default to putting everything in your resume. I mean, if you feel uncomfortable leaving the gaps, which I probably would, I mean, it's not going to hurt I don't think it'll hurt your candidacy for a federal job. It's, they'll say you did something that's not pertinent, unless there's some rule or, again, as Shira said, we're not federal experts. So the federal process is so unique and so different. Corliss and her group would be the ones to really give you the
Right.
definitive answer there.
Yeah, it just sounded weird because someone had told me put everything. The federal,
Yeah.
you put the kitchen sink, you put everything in there. And then this guy said, no, you leave the gaps. And
It might be a combination of both, because again, I don't know, but the everything to me, or for what I've heard, very anecdotally, is put everything that is relevant.
okay.
I think that's what they mean by that.
Yeah.
So,
Volunteer work.
Everything. Yeah. Corliss's famous story is that she once helped a jewelry store manager get into the government because she broke apart all of her skills and inventory management, blah, 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 and like relate it to the government job. So that's, I think, what they mean.
Okay.
Confirm that.
Okay. And I just want to say hi everyone. Hillary, Dan, Karen, Pam, Sonia, Karen. Good to see you again.
You too. Daniel, do you know who the presenter was when you heard that presentation?
Yeah, I'd have to look here in my notes. It was a presentation that's given for military veterans that are transitioning to
Wow.
civil, but I was in the JCA workshop, and so we got a hold of that, so we were allowed to attend. But it was a lot of emphasis on veterans converting over, and it was a gentleman. He had his own company. He was in the Army 27 years, and
Okay.
but yeah,
that's
he seemed to contradict himself a couple times, and people would chime in and say, "Isn't that wrong?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I did it backwards." So he seemed to not be on point.
Definitely get with Corliss on this. This is like her. And besides which, too, you should know with Corliss, where she hails from OPM, the Office of Personnel Management. So that's, she really, really knows what it takes to get in the government. So, and did you have a second question, Daniel? Because I'd cut you off.
Well, yeah, I did have one other one, but I can ask Corliss. I don't want to take time away from the others.
So it was the federal government one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have a private sector question?
Yeah, can you review, if you are not working on your LinkedIn profile, what you put in that slot if you currently aren't volunteering or not working part-time? Is there anything, that should go in that slot, the first slot on your LinkedIn, or for that matter, the resume? What would be the best approach? I know you've talked about this before.
Yeah, well, it all depends. Are you doing any sort of side work, anything that's even volunteer? I don't mean volunteer as in volunteering for like a nonprofit or something, but even helping somebody out with a project or anything like that.
Not currently. The closest thing is participating in the job search, helping other people on these calls.
Yeah. Not
currently.
Look, it's not the worst thing in the world where you had to have an end date for your last job. Okay. It is what it is. What's usually more the issue is if it's a long gap, if it's like 5 years, something like that. People want to know, well, what are you up to? What have you been doing? So you could say, if you wanted to, you could have it, have the headline that says, in transition or seeking new opportunities, and then, put kind of a description of what you want. But again, I wouldn't overthink that right now. It's because it hasn't been that long since your last position, right? Number of months. Ty? Oh, I think he froze and popped off. All right, well, or maybe didn't. Ty, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. You froze up. I missed what you were saying. It said reconnecting. So now I'm connected back again.
Okay, so it hasn't been that long since your last role, right? You're on mute, Ty. Ty, you're on mute.
No, it hasn't been that long. I can also say that I'm still getting interviews. but I'm just wondering if there's a better way to do it, in terms of my resume and LinkedIn.
Yeah, for now, I would say just keep it just the end date,
Okay.
unless you're actually doing some volunteer work or you're doing some consulting or that kind of thing. You want to be accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. Shira,
Okay.
on LinkedIn, what's the banner people can put on, their LinkedIn profile?
Open to work. Do you know
Open
about
for
that
work.
one, Ty?
I do. I haven't done that. Has there been any like feedback or studies that does actually work?
Yeah, in the very beginning, some of you might remember way back when the open to work label came on. And I was one of those like, well, I think it makes you look desperate or whatever. And then Kelly Nugent, who at the time was one of our long-term attendees, pushed back. He's like, no, because, it's worked for me, it's worked for others. It lets people know that you're looking for a job and I'm like, and I backed off. I'm like, okay, like that makes a whole lot of sense. I will tell you, even as a recruiter, that actually sometimes it has been helpful when I see someone's open to work that says to me they're open to being contacted. So I would say in general, I would just say go for it, right? I don't see anything wrong with it.
No.
But it's fairly new. I mean, it's only been in the last year? Less than a year?
Yeah, it hasn't, yeah.
And by the way, employers do that too. They have a separate one that's called open. I think it says we are hiring or something like that. It's purple. And yeah, so I would do it.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions?
I have a quick question, Shira. I've been talking with a recruiter at Amazon. I applied for one job and they said, the hiring manager said, hey, you might be better for this other job. So that's fine. One of the questions he's, without disclosing your current compensation, what are your compensation expectation, inclusive of base, sign-on, and stock? For moving into a new role, we want to ensure that we're using everyone's time appropriately, gauge whether or not you're a good fit. Well, there's clarification about the position title, so I've sent an email about that, but I don't know a whole lot about stocks and sign-on bonuses coming from the education world, because those things do not exist in that realm. So I'm trying to do a little research and find out as much as I can about how I might respond.
So you don't have to actually break it down necessarily.
Okay.
You can use what's called a total cash compensation package,
Okay.
right? I use that phrase a lot anyway when training people on salary, but that actually is what they're talking about. They're not asking you to break down how many options do you want in stock. That's not the issue. It's the total number. So I would look, it's Amazon. And by the way, I do want to make a comment about Amazon as a company in a second. Okay. I'm going to split up your questions. You didn't ask me about Amazon, but I do have to say it publicly. So
that's fine. I'm here.
Yeah. So on the total cash comp concept, you want to take there isn't exactly a formula, okay? But you want to be thinking about, for example, when it comes to bonus, and a lot of for-profit companies do bonuses, and bonuses can range. And Sonia, you're going to want to chime in here, and Vern as well, because I know you're both HR execs. But bonuses could be 10 to 15% of salary, could be more depending on how what kind of company it is, could be a little less. So use that kind of as a gauge, and then maybe tack on a little bit more. Okay, so for just as a round, just even number. So let's say you want to make 100. All right, so then you want to say, well, I'm looking for total cash compensation package in the 130 range, that kind of thing. You could even say if you want above 100, you can go with what I call low, mid, and high, or above 200, same thing, low, mid, and high. You have to be a little careful with it. I'll explain why in a second, but you would say something like, I'm looking for total cash compensation package in the mid 100s or in the upper 100s, but you have to be careful, because when you say low, mid, or high, so let's say mid 100s, what's the bottom of mid 100s? About 140, sort of, okay? That means that if you are actually looking for 150, you don't say mid 100s, because then they'll think 140. Okay, so you have to be a little bit tight about that. But I do want to mention Amazon for a minute, and because Amazon is becoming a big employer around here, and you need to understand about Amazon's culture before you apply. Amazon has what's called their 14 leadership principles, and they interview on those, and you can Google them. And in my estimation, and I've actually talked about this publicly, in my estimation, there are two words that describe or accurately, excuse me, that accurately summarize those 14 leadership principles. Ready? Challenge everything. Challenge everything. Amazon has admittedly a very, very demanding culture. They are always pushing the envelope. Guys, I am saying this slowly and deliberately because I need you to hear me on this. When Amazon came to town, people did not understand the kind of culture that was coming to town. There's a reason why Amazon is buying up everything, right? Whole Foods and this and that and all these things. It is a unbelievably market-focused environment. That means every person who works there has got to be ready to challenge and to be challenged all of the time. You cannot own your own idea. You must allow your idea to be knocked down and made better. There is no pride of authorship at Amazon. There just isn't. It is better and better and better and better and better. That means you have to be resilient, have an unbelievably thick skin. You have to be, it's just a very, very intense kind of a culture. It's not what we call a clan culture. Clan cultures are very warm and friendly, and academia tends to be that way, right? It's all about the team. And Amazon is the exact opposite. It's what we call a market culture, a market culture. So please know that, Pam, if you decide to continue to apply with them, that is the rigor with which you will be expected to work.
I have had a lot of people tell me that, and I've connected with somebody who actually works there, and that's what she said. And, you know, the position they've sent to me, I'm like, well, you know, I really could do the next level up. And she said, well, sometimes they'll bring you in at a level below so that you can get used to the culture, but they often will promote very quickly. I guess if you survive. And see, it's the position is actually
survival thing. It really is.
The position is in Tennessee. And so, you know, he's asking, it's in Nashville. He's like, well, are you willing to commute or relocate? I thought, interesting. So my question is, I told him, I live in Washington, DC metro area. Can I commute some of the time, or at some point, is this position going to require relocation? That way I can kind of gauge, because, you know, if you pick up stakes and move, I mean, they'll pay for the relocation, he said. But then you get there, and because of the type of company they are, you know, I'm sure you either have to hit the bar or they'll spit you out. And so for me, that's a risk. You know, I know my worth and I know what I can do. And I've always worked kind of like that culture. I mean, work is not an issue for me, but it would be different from what I'm used to probably in a school. So I think I have to gauge that carefully.
It would be, I would say, very, very different.
Yeah.
And
Sonia?
Okay. I understand what you're saying, Pam, because they came after me. I mean, to the point I didn't even apply to. I don't know where they found me. And they came after me. I knew enough about it to know I didn't want to work there. Now I did, because it's like Shira said, it's they are used to being the big fish in the little pond. And they function like that. And that don't do too well here in the DC area. We got too many companies and all that right now. You know, this is the ocean.
Well, here it is, yeah.
And it's gonna be interesting to see how they work out overall.
Some of the stuff I'm reading, they're kind of, it sounds like I read an article not too long ago that that they were partnering with Arlington County, and they're buying up one of the affordable housing areas. I can't remember the name of it, and they're going to upgrade, you know, over time. I guess they're financing whoever's going to be the company that manages it. But the concern is with the gentrification is that, you know, that's affordable housing, and that once they do the upgrades, it's not going to be so affordable anymore. So, I think that's the part of the potential outcome, we'll say the outcome of a company like Amazon in the area.
And see, this is a transient environment. People come here, stay a month or two, a year or two, and then they're done.
Yeah.
And where Amazon work, like that poor little city that got smashed in the hurricane.
Yes.
They would do wonderful there because they would be the big fish and everybody would just swarm to work for them. I know that. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I remember when FedEx came to Memphis. Oh my goodness, everybody wanted to work there. Yeah. And it's still the #1 employer, but it can do that. It's hard to do that here. They got to compete with Northrop Grumman and Booz Allen, and it's really interesting to see how that works.
Yeah.
But it's not my culture based on what Shira said. That's not my culture. So I had to think it through too. And I said, no.
Just be very thoughtful about it, Pam, because there's who you are as a worker, and then there's the culture that you're used to. It's two different things.
Yep.
You're used to a very different culture, even if you have your own sort of, strong work ethic and whatever. So anyway, I don't want to belabor it too much because I know we've got other questions, but that hopefully that helps everybody, even for anybody on this call who's thinking about possibly working at Amazon. And I will tell you one last thing, and I will get off the topic. I have actually met people who I think would be perfect at Amazon. And I actually say that, like, oh my gosh, you should go work there because they've got that sort of, rough and tumble driver, kind of a personality. So there are people who really are appropriate for us. So anyway, we'll move on from there. Yeah, Vern?
Just one other general comment, Pam, you talk about, you'd have to potentially relocate. And as you said, God, I relocate, and then what happens if it doesn't work out? Now I'm in Tennessee, right? And just a general comment. I mean, every time that you are looking for a job, there's always some risk, and it's you just have to, how big is the risk? Is it a little risk? Is it a big risk?
Sure.
And to me, that's a huge risk, right?
Yeah. Well, my family lives in Knoxville, so that's like a 3-hour drive. I mean, that's home. So
my family.
I lived there for a long time in Knoxville. So
okay.
That's part of the reason I even applied for that job in the first place. If if it wasn't for family, I probably would not have. Yeah. I wouldn't have done that. So
okay. All right.
It's just the job market here is so much stronger than it is in Tennessee, and even like the opportunities like this for networking and that kind of thing. I have looked for those in that area and I haven't found them. And so that's the other part that I think it makes it much more difficult beyond that to continue to search unless things like this stay online, because then it wouldn't matter. But those are just things, I don't want to take up everybody's time, but those are just part of my thought process in terms of trying to make a good decision.
Thanks, Pam. And also, I think for everybody on this call, regardless of the whole Amazon thing, be thinking about corporate culture. Look online, do some research. I would say go to Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a little bit iffy because most people who write comments on Glassdoor are disgruntled. So you don't usually get the talent.
Sorry to interrupt very quickly. Michael Mayer, isn't that the guy from the killer from Halloween? Isn't that like the?
Well, Halloween is past. It's coming up Christmas, so I put the mask in the box.
Oh, okay, understandable. Thanks for clearing that up.
All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
It's not the Halloween Michael Meyer.
So anyway, be thinking about culture. Okay. Cultural fit. So if you go to Glassdoor, take a little grain of salt because people, again, can be disgruntled. And sometimes it's not about the whole culture. Sometimes somebody's disgruntled because of their own department or their particular boss. And of course, people change and cultures change and things of that nature. So do your research, but then also, balance it out.
Yeah, and that's an area where your network can really be of a great benefit to find people in your network that have either worked there or they're able to introduce you to somebody who works there or used to work there. And it's best then you're getting it directly from someone's own individual experience. And as Shira said, you go to Glassdoor and you don't really know this person that put the thing on Glassdoor, and you don't know what their circumstances were. They could have been fired because they were a really bad employee. So.
Yeah, I agree with the talking with people internally, and I've talked to one and that I met through networking, and then I just emailed a different recruiter and got an email back from her. So she's willing to chat with me after the first of the year. So, you know, I think for me, I am a very collaborative type of person. And what I have found that frustrates me is that, you know, things are an iterative process. You take it and you just keep, you know, you plan, you implement, you evaluate it, and then you improve it. So it's that continuous improvement cycle that should always be ongoing. And if you're like that and you're in a culture that doesn't operate that way, it can be very frustrating. And that's kind of what I found. You know, I'm kind of like into ideation and really getting that team together where ego really should be put aside and let's focus on, you know, what we need to do. And so kind of what I'm hearing is that's kind of how it is, except at an uber aggressive level. So I don't know if it's that, and it's not that necessarily, I'm kind of hearing not necessarily everybody's on the same team per se, because people are always looking to advance. I mean, that's in any organization, and people are going to try to get themselves to the front so that they can improve. So I think that's probably a question, you know, sure, based on what you're saying, is it really a collective working together, or is it the pushback so that people can elevate themselves? And I think there's a difference between the two. I kind of live in the, you know, the dream land of everybody gets along, but that's not really how it works. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
By the way, everybody, I know there was an individual here who was a little bit disruptive, so they are no longer with us. I removed them. Well, I think we had a Zoom bomber for our first ever, actually, which is interesting. So
Wow.
yeah. Anyway, moving right along. So who else has a job search question?
I have another question. When you're negotiating a salary, should you ever bring up like items such as the cost of parking or even the commute time?
So what there is a place to do that. When did you were you thinking of doing that up front?
Well, I haven't been given an offer, but given the job, it's probably about an hour away and probably will have to pay for parking, which will not be cheap.
Gotcha. So it is absolutely appropriate to ask that toward the end of the interview process. I mean, look, you could ask it up front. I mean, if you needed to, but if it's a make or breaker, yeah, for sure. Because as you get closer to salary negotiations, all of that matters. All of that matters. So yeah, I would absolutely ask what the parking situation is. Do they reimburse? You have to decide, of course, if you're going to be willing to do that hour-long commute, right?
Okay.
But yeah, for sure, bring it up. There's no reason not to. It's just like you'd ask about benefits or anything like that. So toward the end, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
And you know, even when you get the offer, you also could negotiate, you know, with the offer, if the offer comes in a little lower than you're hoping, you can always go back and say, you know, I was hoping that, you know, it would be more like this. And, you know, are you willing to, you know, is there any room for movement, with the fact in mind that, you know, I'm going to have to pay for parking, right? And so is that $2,000 a year or $3,000 a year? And if they come back and offer you $5,000 more, then you help cover that cost.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sonia?
I have a question on the application. I've been talking this over with some colleagues and I get different opinions. What is, do you harm yourself if when you doing the initial application and then they ask for references and you haven't even talked to anybody. Do you harm yourself if you tell them I'd rather give references as we get closer to the, you know, to the I will say the
It
offer, I'm
depends.
gonna say it like that.
It depends. Is it to an employer or a
Yeah, it's the employer,
yeah.
and they are putting, you know how you
Sure.
duplicate everything, you know, they ask for your resume, and then inside the application online, they want you, they're asking you the same thing. And so me personally, I just cut and paste because
Yeah.
I'm not going to rewrite the resume. And then it gets down to, they normally want about 3 references. And like I said, you haven't talked to anybody.
Well, so first of all, they're not going to call your they're not supposed to call your references unless telling you that, right? They're going to get your permission first. So they shouldn't be calling them right away. That said, I would have a conversation and say, you know, look, my preference is to provide references as we get farther along the process to make sure that this is a good fit. Would that be okay? And say, and if not, are you planning to call references early? And if so, may I ask, you know, about your process and your timing around that?
Well,
if it's a headhunter, some headhunters will check them very early just to vet you as a candidate, just generally speaking. But employers, as you know, right, typically wait till the end. Anyway, I think they're probably just trying to get their ducks in a row so that they're not having to scramble at the end.
Well, I'm not comfortable giving my references. I don't know what you'll do with them. I have had previous, like, you know, I normally report to somebody on the C-suite, CEO, COO, CFO, general counsel, anybody. And I've had them call me where they say, you know, hey, Sonia, I got a call from blah, 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 blah. And they want me to give a reference for you. I haven't even authorized it. They got the information from my job in the company I work for, and they may have known them or something.
That does happen. I'm not saying it should, but it definitely does.
To me, that's just not, it's not appropriate.
And that has nothing to do with the timing of when you provide your references. That's just them going behind the scenes and doing some private, you know, checking up on you. It's a small town. People do that. I'm not saying it's appropriate. It's just people do it all the time. They tap their network.
But my question to you, do you think it ruins your chance to go to the next level because you didn't add it?
It's all on how you frame it. It's about you saying, I would, because my references are senior level, and, you know, and their time is valuable, of course, I would rather provide references as we get farther down the process to see if this is a good fit. Would that be okay? That's it. Just be very respectful about it.
Okay.
And then it's fine.
I guess the other thing I would say about references is, obviously, as you're getting into the job search, that's something you should think about very early on. I mean, you should, you know, I would assume the references are people who know you pretty well, right? And these are people you talk to. You know, this goes for everybody, and so they should know, hey, I'm thinking about leaving my current job and looking for a new job, and you know, I want to make sure that, you know, you'll be able to give me a reference. And yes, or I've just lost my job and now I'm in job transition. The references should know right up front that you're entering into the job search process, and, you know, put them on alert that, you know, you could be called. Hopefully, the way it would work is, as Shira just pointed out, they won't really call any of those people until they're close to, okay, you're the 2 or 3 finalists. Now let's start checking references. And you would know as you're getting to the last 2 or 3 finalists. And obviously, prior to that time, you let those references know, hey, I'm in this particular job search for this particular company. It's looking good. I've made it through the 2nd interview. I'm going to the 3rd interview. So just want to give you, I want to tell you a little bit about the company and start to prepare you. So if they do call you, I mean, this is just kind of from a strategic approach, thinking this through and making sure you're doing everything you can to put yourself in the best position. So when they do call your references, you get the kind of reference that hopefully tips the scale in your favor.
Well, all my references, no, but they know I'm in the market. And basically they will call me before they respond back to the company. Hey, Sonia, what's going on? I got a call from.
Right. Well, good.
Yeah.
So, so it sounds like you've got a protection there anyway.
I do. I mean, because I had to give a reference last week for a former VP of finance. And she called me and told me it was coming, and it did. And, she got the job.
Yeah. Well, and what Sonia said is really important. And I've also done this. I do it myself automatically. What you just said is, if somebody calls me and said, Vern, they're going to call you for a reference, I ask them, okay, tell me a little bit about the job. What are the key things that I should, when they ask me questions, are there key things that you'd like me to communicate that you think would help, promote your candidacy for this particular job? Because I could say, a lot of things about Shira, but maybe there's 2 or 3 that are most important for this job. And those are the things that, would help Shira the most in terms of landing the job.
Right. And let me just say one thing, pivot, and then Dan, I see your hand. Actually, there's a connection here to what we're talking about references. I'm going to parallel that to recommendations on LinkedIn. Yeah. Recommendations on LinkedIn, number 1, are very important. Go get them. Yeah. Go get them, especially from former supervisors, could be colleagues, anybody who's worked with you, not a friend, not a family member, right? People have worked with you, even in a volunteer capacity, because that's work, right? But when you ask for a recommendation, make sure that you are asking for a recommendation based upon your brand, the kinds of skills, hard skills and soft skills that you want to showcase out there in the world, right? So not just generically and just say, oh, would you write me a recommendation? And then people's like, oh, Vern, he's so detail oriented and organized. Well, he might be, but maybe that's not his brand. Maybe he wants to be seen as strategic and analytical or whatever. So make sure that you tell your recommenders exactly what you want to be showcased in that recommendation. Okay. Dan?
Yeah, so I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions or for salary negotiations for a place that has been very transparent, very open, that the given position is grant funded and therefore the salary is quite limited in terms of there's a finite range. There's not a lot of flexibility there. And it's even among the nonprofit community, it's really pretty low. So given that, so I appreciate the transparency and I appreciate the fact that they've been upfront, but given that, is there anything, do I have any leverage? Again, this is very, very premature. This is all in the early stages. So who knows, this may not go anywhere, but if it does advance, do I have any leverage in terms of what I can try and negotiate? Certainly not really in terms of salary, I don't think, but any suggestions in terms of what I can do to make it, from a benefits perspective, more attractive? Because the substance of the position is great, but I just, it really is a sort of a.
So yeah, when there's the limited budget, nonprofit, kind of, right. So there's all kinds of benefits. There's cash related benefits and non-cash. So the cash related, of course, are, medical benefits and so forth. And that, look, it is what it is, right? Their package is what their package is. It's not like they can really change that because it's one package for everybody. The one area that, the main area that they tend to be able to be more flexible on is vacation, right? Or PTO, right? That kind of thing. Because that's no skin off their back, an extra week here, an extra week there. Doesn't cost them anything in terms of a hard cost. Other than that, and this is a money thing, is bonuses, but a lot of, and it sounds like you're talking about a charitable C3 nonprofit, right? Not a trade association.
No,
When you said grant, that says to me it's a C3.
That's correct.
Right. So oftentimes C3s aren't going to be, some do for sure to offer bonuses, but I don't know if they would or not. Yeah, I don't think so. Right. So that may not, they may not factor in. Frankly, I think, vacation might be your best bet. Vern, is there anything else you can think of?
No, other than, no, not off the top of my head. Maybe they have, a great, offering of free food during the day or something like that. I don't know.
And it might be, you know what, Dan, look, at the end of the day, we look at these job opportunities. Obviously, compensation is important. You got to eat. I get it. I totally get that. At the end of the day, though, we also know there are a lot of other factors that play in, because you could have the best compensation package in the world and hate your job or the boss or the culture or whatever, right? So you've got to think about what's most important to you. I would actually invite everybody to just do a laundry list: must-haves and nice-to-haves,
Yeah.
must-haves and nice-to-haves when you're looking at weighing anything in your job search. And with compensation, you know what? Look, I get it. I'm making this up. Okay. Maybe what they would offer you is 50K less than what you were making. I don't know. Okay. That may or may not be, I mean, it sounds extreme, right? But that may or may not actually be a make or breaker for you. Maybe you could live on that, but maybe the culture and the job and other aspects of the role outweigh the haircut, that you would be taking. So yeah, I think vacation's one thing. Other than that, look through their benefits at whenever the time comes. I don't know, just see if they have, in fact, I would ask them directly if you get to that stage and say, look, I know, there's the comp package here is a little bit, under market. I get it, nonprofit, whatever. What I was really looking for was a compensation package in the blah area, not the blah area. And you ask them, is there anything we can do to get me closer to my ideal total compensation package? And let them be creative.
Yeah.
Well,
Sure,
the one thing I'll say is that they did indicate, again, very early on in the process. This is all a bit silly, sort of even talking about this, but they did say that they recognize that it's pretty low, and they've seen my experience, my background, and they have a sense so they said there might very well be an opportunity that pretty early on in employment, there might be a way for they could bump me up in terms of a promotion, like a title change, things like that. So in terms of certain ways like that to advance fairly quickly. So that's one.
If it's a title change, that would come with a money change.
Presumably. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Shira, I was wondering, I'm not familiar with that industry. I've never work with in companies that focus on grants for their revenue stream, but is it possible to negotiate that in 6 months you reevaluate me, and if I'm doing as well as you think or should be or whatever, I can get a bump at that time?
Not necessarily, Sonia, because the thing about grant money is that it is very finite. It is a block of money, and that's it. Now, within that money, and I don't want to get too specific here, but there's this thing called restricted funds and unrestricted funds, and how the employer can use it. That's irrelevant, other than it is a very defined block. So I don't care if you were the biggest superstar in the world, that money isn't changing unless they get a new grant. Right?
So how do you factor in your annual performance and salary review if the money is
they're supposed to factor it in. They're supposed to take a look at the entire pot of money for all of the employees that would be affected by it. They're supposed to slice it and dice it. They're supposed to say, okay, so for position X, we can afford Y. And then with a little bit of margin, for promotion, let's say the grant is a 5-year grant. And they say, we've got all this money to spend. For this salary band or for this role, we can afford X with a little bit of flex room as the person grows to Y. Does that make sense? So that's their job, is to allocate the resources.
Okay.
And they may have allocated for phone or parking or, those are other things. But, if they're not willing to pull a slice out of their operating budget.
Right. That's
and
right.
if they give you, see, that's the thing, Daniel, is the grant is finite. And so they could say, okay, well, we can pay your parking or we can give you part of your phone, but then the salary may go down.
Right.
Because like Shira said, it's only X amount of money. the question is, do they have any money in their operating budget
Right,
to sweeten the pie with the phone or paying your parking or, you know,
right.
something like that? And they may have it and they may not, because if they're a nonprofit, they probably don't have a lot of money laying around. I mean,
It's
I've
a
worked
very,
in,
it's a very good
Yeah.
point, Pam, because within nonprofits, often it can be where a person is paid out of different buckets, different accounts.
yep,
Like I
Yeah.
know somebody who actually was paid off of 2 grids, like
Yeah.
50% for this or 50% for that. So there can be some creativity to your point, whether it's
Yeah.
out of operating budget or if another grant is appropriate or whatever. So I would ask them,
yeah,
you know, is there any flexibility here to pull from a different bucket
yeah.
to
That's,
bridge
mhm.
the gap?
Because if they really want you, Daniel, and with your experience, and if you're willing to, I mean, if it's the other things that appeal to you about the job more than the money, and like Shira said, if you can make it work, that if they can bring a phone or pay your parking or something like that, they may be willing to go back into those other buckets and find money. That's what I always had to do, you know, working, running a school and things like that. I was very creative in figuring out how I was going to get money and, you know, how I was going to pay for things. And, you know,
I appreciate that, Pam. It's a really
Yeah.
great suggestion. And again, if and when it comes to that in the process, I will absolutely pursue that, because it's yeah, I mean, I'm not targeting these places with the expectation that I was going to get rich, but you know, it's still, any little bump would be helpful. So it's a great suggestion. So thank
and
you.
the other thing is, I don't know what kind of job it is or position, but the other thing is your opportunity to bring money in. Okay, I don't know if there's anything built in that position, but I was just thinking about, you know, when as a principal, we worked off of, you know, we didn't get that much money from the government, just a little bit for title money for kids, but the way I got money for what the teachers need is we did it through our auction every year. And parents gave a lot of money to that because we spent the money on things that were going to serve the students. We didn't say it was for electric bill. We didn't say it was for salaries or any of that kind of thing, because that's not very sexy and people don't get excited about that. So we took all the instructional materials mostly out of the budget and paid for it through fundraising, but parents were very motivated. Okay, so when I'm thinking about the creativity, that's where you can go back to them and say, okay, is there another bucket, or is there a way for me to help enhance the revenue stream? Because then some of that money maybe could come back to you. So those are just some.
I think that in this case, I think that second option is not really an option in this
Okay.
case.
Yeah.
But the other stream, potential other stream, that's a great suggestion. So thank you.
Sure.
The other point, Daniel, and this goes for the situation you're in, and really any situation, you know, if you do land this job and you decide to take it, you know, once you're in the job and you're performing at a high level, all of that helps to, you know, go back and make requests that, you know, once you become a valued employee, then you've got a little bit more clout in terms of, you know, what can we do for Daniel?
Right. Yeah, that's the goal. Thank you.
Yeah.
Good. Other questions?
I have a couple comments regarding references, just to circle back. I used to think of looking at, when they look at a reference, you know, early on it was negative, but I think about it, what if your references give you a raving review and they say, oh, we want to talk to this person? So I look at it that way. The other comment I have is, one of my references says, well, what area code do you think this call is coming from? Because I don't answer calls usually if I don't recognize them. So it might be a good idea to prompt them on that too. Also, government jobs, they seem to want the references up front, at least state jobs, state of Maryland. If you don't provide them, they'll consider the application incomplete. And I have applied for an association job and they wanted references up front and they may look at it as incomplete. Anybody have any comments?
I mean, there are companies who do that, you know, where they want it on your application. It doesn't mean they're going to call them right away. It just means, like I said, they want to get their ducks in a row. But I would ask a very simple question to the employer, you know, whether you put them down first and ask the question or ask the question right, either way, say, what's the timing here? At what stage in the process will you be checking my references? Just ask the question.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I
Yeah,
know after the government interview, it was about a week and a half and they were checking references. It could have been the HR department doing that as opposed to the hiring manager. It was only about a week and a half later.
After the interview or after you apply?
After the interview, they wanted the references before I interviewed though.
Yeah.
They said,
and oftentimes the government, I don't know about local or state government, but oftentimes the federal government, they'll just do one interview, just an interview to hire you. And so that would make sense that they want to, boom, get on it.
And think about it again from the employer standpoint. So we want your references up front so that as this process, proceeds, when we are ready to call the references,
Right.
we don't want to have to call you back
Exactly.
and track you down to
That's
get the
right.
references.
Get
We
the
want all
ducks
our
in a
ducks in a row so it's a matter of efficiency actually in the HR recruiting world.
Yep.
And when you're in the HR recruiting world, you're going a mile a minute, every day. And so oh my God, I don't have the references. Now I got to track him. Now I get his voicemail. I sent him an email and they're ready to go. And now
Right.
you got this bottleneck. So.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's not uncommon. It's just a matter of, it's just a matter of when are they going to, that's more, I think the question for you guys is asking them at what point will they be checking them?
Yeah.
Not the fact that they're asking for them up front.
Yeah.
So question, the bottleneck that seems to be happening in my job search is getting that final offer. I'm able to get interviews and make it through several rounds, but I just fell short when it comes to final offer. What's your advice for someone that gets stuck in this spot? Well, look, the final offer thing sometimes has less to do with you and more it has to do with the competition. Because you never know, you're running a blind horse race, as they say. You never know who your competition is. Well, if you get to the final round, that means you are strong enough to be in the final round. But what happens in the final round is it's normally 2 candidates, maybe 3, and every single one of you can do the job. That's the only reason why you guys made it to the end. Then it's very, very subtle things usually. Everything from, well, this person has this particular skill more than that particular skill, comes from this industry background, is going to have a lesser learning curve. Oh, we think the person's going to stay longer, or maybe a subtle culture fit with the particular personalities in the team. Or one person in the search committee felt this, or the team interview felt this and that. It is so subtle. At that level, it usually has not much to do with you and your performance. It really, really usually has to do with their needs and how well they're going to pick. Because look, when somebody makes a hire, it's a big deal. They're making an investment of their time and their resources, their training efforts, all of it. They're hoping that you're going to stay for a long time. They don't just want to hire anybody, right? Everybody's looking for the unicorn. And so for them, I always say this, they're trying to mitigate their risk. So I would really just invite you to just rethink no, look, the fact that I got here is great. Now, that said, in final level interviews, okay, it's not only about that. How do you actually, advance your candidacy? And that has to do with you really making sure that you are mitigating their risk and you do understand what's important to them strategically, tactically, culturally, all of the things that they've said that they've been looking for during the search, starting from the first time you read that job posting, all the way through however many interviews you get. Listen, and feedback what you're hearing and offer ideas and offer suggestions and be strategic. I don't care what level you're at. I don't care if you are the receptionist or the CEO. Everybody can take a strategic approach. Everybody can say, look, this is where I hear you're going. Let's banter about some ideas. If I'm onboarded, soon, let's talk about what, my first 6 months would look like and how I can really make a quick impact. Just get to know the organization, get to know the industry, the sector, and show that you are going to make an immediate, valuable, and hopefully long-term contribution. And that's a very quick, high-level way to say this. I actually have one of the videos I think I've shared with you guys in the past, and I'll share it right now. And Vern, that I'd love to hear your thoughts as well on this topic. I'll just bring it up one more time. If you go to purposefulhire.com and go to the job seekers tab here, and then go to Shira Speaks to Job Seekers, there's a particular video I have that's called Interviews That Land the Offer. So you may want to avail yourself of that. There's a slide deck here as well. Okay, so it does really talk much more in detail about what I just shared. Okay, Vern, your thoughts?
Yeah, just and so as Shira said, I agree with everything Shira said. Ask as many questions you can. Try to understand the company and what their needs are, what their objectives are, what their challenges are, where they're going in the future, and then be able to respond in a way that hopefully convinces them that while this person really gets it, they're the best person to be, the best person out of the 3 finalists to be offered this job. But even, let's suppose in the previous thing, when Shira said, there's 3 final candidates and the decision it's the thinnest of margins that somebody, beats someone else out for the offer. You can do everything that Shira and I've just said, and you still don't get the offer because, of some small issue. And so I agree with Shira. It's very frustrating to go that far and put that much energy into this whole process and know you're that close to the offer, and then you don't get it. Yeah. But that's just the name of the game.
I gotta say, employers go through that with candidates too, more and more right now, right? Because it is such a tight market. There are lots of openings and lots of candidates flooding the market. Employers are losing people. They are losing candidates. They are losing great candidates to other offers, just like that. They're trying to be in a position where they are the employer of choice, not the other. So please understand, they get a little nervous too when they interview you and are like, oh my gosh, I really want to, land this person. And then boom, you get another offer and you're off the market, and they haven't moved quickly enough or didn't do a good enough job selling themselves or whatever. Has anybody I don't know if I've ever asked this question before. Has anybody on this call actually been a hiring manager? You've hired people. I mean, Sonia, I know you have because you've been in HR. Anybody else? Michael? Daniel? Okay. Can you guys resonate with what we're talking about from that lens? When you have hired people, right? When you're looking for that unicorn, you're looking for, can you share any feedback to resonate with what we're talking about here?
Yeah, Michael here. Absolutely. I would be very quick. If I have a perfect candidate, I would go to HR and say, don't lose another half a day to make an offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I had a teacher one time that came in and we did our panel interview, and I knew that another school was trying to hire her because they told me. And we had a part where we had the pastor also interview him. So I wouldn't let her out of my office. I had the secretary call him and say, I need you to get over here now. He came and I offered her before she walked out the door. I mean, that was how quick, because I knew if I let her out, I might not get her. And she was exactly as what I thought she was fabulous. She was fabulous. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes if it's that competitive, you really have to act with urgency or you lose people.
So it's a two-way street, guys. I know we always talk about your job search, but employers face their own set of challenges, right? And trying to find the right hire, just like you're trying to find the right job. They're trying to find the right hire. Daniel, any comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Pam and Michael said, that, yeah, I've had the same thing where you go through the process and you lose the candidate because the process is too long and you're not able to capture them. One comment I have, I don't know, for Hillary, that I thought might be useful is, when I've gone to interviews and I haven't gotten a job and I've gotten to the second or third round, I've called people up and asked them for feedback. And sometimes they're very open, and they'll say, yeah, this other candidate we hired had this, and this, and we really thought you were strong here, here, and here. And then sometimes they don't provide any feedback. But I thought that's a useful thing to at least to ask. Hey, thank you so much. I'm glad you got a candidate. Hope it works out. By the way, did you have any feedback about my interview with you or something like that?
Yeah, and they won't always give feedback. A lot of times they won't, because of litigiousness or whatever.
Yes.
Most don't. But you're right. Every once in a while they might.
Yeah. And
well, I want to
please, Sonia.
piggyback on what Hillary said. I could, what she described, it could have come directly from me, because I find myself in that situation enough. And I don't understand it, especially when you're talking to the recruiter and they say, oh, you're everything I want. And I will probably call you back before the end of the week, because I need to get with the hiring manager and get their schedule, and you're on edge waiting, and the call don't come through. And I'm like, okay, what happened? And it's very discouraging. But the one thing I will say, you can't take it personally. You just got to say, okay, they're lost, and go on. But it's a lot of that. I hear that a lot. I talk to, like I say, other colleagues and so forth. And but I do like what Mike Mayer say, when I'm in that, in that hiring mode, and it doesn't even have to be for HR. It'll be for anywhere in the company. I'm normally involved in the interview. When they get the one, I'm like, let's do it. I'm not looking for, as you say, the purple squirrel. I'm looking for the person that can do the job. And when you find them, you got to move, because if they're gone, you're out of luck, and that's your fault. You need to move and hire the people when they are available, because if once that time has passed, you're back right where you were. And a lot of times, especially in the GovCon, your contract is dependent on you getting the talent. And so you have to make it happen. But it's very discouraging, Hillary. I know how you feel. And especially when you go through 2 or 3 interviews, you just know, you're so close, but yet so far. And you just don't take it personally. You just move on.
Keep the pipeline full. Never, it's a balancing act between trying to get a little bit emotionally invested in the role to say, oh, is this something that I'm interested, versus getting too emotionally invested where you feel a little crushed when you don't get it, because it's a business decision. For them, it just 100% is a business decision. I remember many years ago when I was with a search firm, and I used to do administrative search. And at that time, we would have a candidate, and we would, send them on lots of interviews. It wasn't just like a search, right? It was like lots. And so there's this one candidate, and she literally, I sent her on 10 interviews, 10 within a short period of time. First 9, bridesmaid. And every single, bridesmaid, the 10th one, she got the job. And I think she is still, this is at least 20 years ago. I think she is still there. Because when she hit like the 20-year mark, I saw her on the street. And I'm like, are you still there? She's yes. You just don't know. Okay, that was the right job for her, not the other 9.
Yeah, and just, Sonia, one, just to intricacy, doing the hiring, which you may have run in this too, somebody that you and your team want to hire, but then it gets referred to another part of the organization and it gets shut down at that point. So even though we may have thought she was great, it didn't come through. Yeah. And then I had to call and tell them we weren't hiring them, which was, that was an uncomfortable situation, but that was just, it was what it was. And then the last job and it turned out they got a job at another school, and it was really good that we didn't hire that individual, because I don't think it would have, what we thought wasn't necessarily what the case was. And so having that other insight was helpful, and go ahead.
By the way, because of that, Hillary, speaking to Pam's point, you don't know all of the variables in that role. All the variables in the culture. You think, oh, I didn't get the job. You could have dodged a bullet, right? There could have been some situation going on there where they're like, oh my gosh, Hillary is wonderful, but let me tell you, she would be so frustrated if she had to deal with so-and-so or in such and such a situation. We're protecting her, right?
Yeah, it would have never worked with our pastor. I mean, she probably would have done a good job, but not with him. And she was better off where she ended up. So that's exactly, It's not that there was something bad about her.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah, I
God
mean, it
knows
was
what's the right job.
for everybody, you know, and then the last job I made it to the third round, Hillary, and I had to do a presentation, answering the questions with the panel. And, you know, I really thought I was in a good position because she had been so enthusiastic after my other interview. And then she asked for my PowerPoint at the end. And I thought, So then she called me it was a couple days later to say they had decided to hire someone else. But, you know, to her credit, she said, I told the hiring manager I wanted to call myself. I don't really want to lose, you know, the group that was in the next round in case when they have another position open, she wants to choose from that group. And she offered me 2 other things. One is some volunteer opportunities and the other is some consulting. So I applied for both of those. And the reason she said I didn't get picked was because I had not worked with their products and services as recently as the person that they hired.
So it's so subtle.
And, you know, there was nothing I could do about that. I mean, nothing I could have changed about my presentation or anything I said or did that would have changed that. So, you know, it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, and they can only hire one person.
Yep.
Only hire one person. So they have to make the and so I will tell you, I've had so many searches, Vern and Shun, I'm sure you've had the same thing. I've had so many searches where it comes right down to the end and literally the employer is baffled. They don't know who to hire. They literally could hire every single one of the finalists. They say it's a good problem to have, right? But man, we agonize, literally agonize. I've had employers like, oh, I can't make a decision now. Let me take the weekend. Oh, I can't make it. And then we check references. And then in the references, like, oh, there's a subtlety here and a subtlety. Sometimes it's literally the references that make the difference. Not because any reference is bad. It's just that and not that any are overly good. It's that one reference emphasizes, oh, this superpower versus that. Subtle, subtle, subtle. If the recruiter is doing their job, right? HR person is doing their job, oftentimes you're going to have a really, really tight pool. So Hillary, just understand the fact that you're getting to the final round says something about your candidacy and how well you're doing, right? They're probably just factors out of your control. Okay. All right. And then Michael, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize. I'm not from the DC area. I found this link on Meetup, so I apologize. I'm from out of town in Virginia Beach.
No. By the way, we are open to the whole world, actually. So please.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I apologize
We just mostly happen to be DC.
Yeah, and I was late too, so I apologize. I have a question about references. I'm very early in the job search. I'm just actually tweaking my resume. But the references, I'm curious about what kind of reference are the best ones? Because I have distributors I worked with really well, partners, previous reports, they reported to me. What are the best references? I mean, supervisors, customers.
So can you like in like one line, can you tell us what you do?
I used to be an executive for customer support.
Executive for, and you just mentioned distributors. Why is that?
Because I was dealing with them directly. They were distributing our product and service.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. So at an executive level, it is a good idea to have a well-rounded portfolio of references.
Okay.
1 or 2 supervisors, direct report, distributor, like almost like a 360. I would give about 5, in your case, about 5 references, a couple of this, a couple of that, so that they have the perspective. Now, unless the employer is specifically asking for, I only want supervisors, but oftentimes they want to see the 360, especially if you're in a supervisory role.
So what if you left your supervisor who ended up the president of the company and you left the job? What's the chances of him giving you a good resume reference?
Wait, I'm sorry. You were the president?
No, I reported to the president. He was my supervisor,
yeah.
But I left the company. So is that?
People leave companies all the time. Did you leave on good terms?
I believe I did, but I'm pretty sure.
It happens all the time. I mean, people leave jobs constantly. That's a lot of reason why people are in transition. So I wouldn't worry about that if you had a good relationship.
Well, and Michael, anybody that you're going to put down for a reference, obviously you're going to contact and let them, ask them for permission, right? To put them down as a reference. And your references are, these are people that should know you pretty well. Obviously, the president of the company knew you as an employee. I don't know what kind of relationship you had with him, but the stronger the relationship with, whoever your reference is, and the more they know about you, the greater likelihood that they're going to be able to provide, a positive reference.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Eric?
Can I ask something? I had a final round coding interview on Wednesday, and I haven't heard anything back yet. Should I call the recruiter today and just?
So I apologize. You had a final round interview. When was that?
Coding interview Wednesday.
Wednesday. So today is Friday? No, not
Yeah.
yet. Well, before I say that, when did they say they'd get back to you?
They didn't, but I talked to the recruiter the day before the interview, and he said, I asked him if I pass this, how many more interview rounds? He said, this is it.
Yeah,
It's probably there'd be.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't try to contact the recruiter today.
No. Look, here's the thing, Eric, and I've said this to people. I say this all the time. If an employer wants to offer you the job, they will track you down.
Mhm.
They will send a carrier pigeon to your home.
Okay.
Seriously, Eric, there's no reason for you to follow up. You following up is not going to get them to move any faster.
Okay.
Unless you had another offer. That's different. If you had another offer pending, absolutely. And if this was your first job, so let's say company A is your first choice, and you're hoping to get an offer, and company B has just offered you a job. I would call company and say, look, I just want to let you know I've been offered another, an offer, say, don't have to say, of course, who. So I wanted to let you know at first right of refusal because you are my first choice. So is there anything we can do to expedite this process? Oh my gosh, they will be grateful, right? That you've given them the opportunity to not lose you, to our point a few minutes ago. But in terms of a regular search, just wait, hold tight. Now look, if 2 weeks go by, you can touch base just to say, hey, any news at that point, if they haven't called you back in 2 weeks, it could be that they've moved on, although they should have let you know, or it could be that they're just, still going through the process. Something changed. Maybe a new candidate came in the mix where they weren't expecting. Maybe people are on vacation, especially right now. That's the issue. These last 2 weeks of the month of December, people are on vacation. They have to get sign-offs, signatures on blah, blah, on your, offer letter, whatever. So no, 2 days, that's nothing in the world of hiring. Yeah, just hang tight. Just let them follow up with you. But make sure that you send a thank you note. I don't know if you've done that yet.
Yeah, I did. I sent the thank you note to the two people in the meeting, the project manager and
Good.
I guess he was a
Thank you.
senior programmer, and I sent an email to the recruiter and an email to the previous guy who did the screening that wasn't in this interview.
Okay, so Eric,
I heard he said good things about me, so yeah.
you've done your job. I would just hang tight, and don't stop your job search because it's not over yet, right? Keep doing what you're doing.
I was considering, I found this job through a job fair. I was considering sending a thank you note to the recruiter for the job fair, but I don't know his email.
That's a very kind thing to do. I mean, it's certainly not necessary because
I haven't talked to him since the job fair over a month ago. So
if you can find him, that's a very kind thing to do. If you want to reach out, sure. That's above and beyond. That would be lovely if you can figure out who it is.
I'm connected with him on LinkedIn, but I don't have his email.
Just send him a LinkedIn message. Just say thank you for screening me for this. I'm in final stages. Just want to express my appreciation.
Okay.
That's all. That's very nice. In fact, I might actually get back to the hiring manager that you did that.
Right, that's right.
Okay.
Don't do it for that reason, but it'd be, probably would happen that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Vern, any last comment?
No.
Okay. All right then. Well, everyone, it's great seeing you all. Look forward to seeing you guys again, Lord willing, next week. In the meantime, for those of you who want to stay on for the prayer call, you're welcome to do so. Otherwise, we'll see you hopefully in a week. And by the way, it is my intention to continue throughout December. So we just keep on going unless we ever have a holiday, which I don't think we ever do. If next year Christmas falls on a Friday, no, we would not.
I think Christmas
So no meeting
falls
next
on a
week?
Friday.
It's just on a Saturday this year, so
No,
it's okay.
No, yeah.
So is there a
Okay.
meeting next week? I'm sorry.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Okay. All right,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Have a blessed day.
All right.